Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's discussion where myself and staff attorney Amy Doukoure will be talking a bit about how CAIR Michigan protects the religious rights of those housed at MDOC. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amy. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Zienab. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, doing well. I should have introduced myself. So my name is Zienab Fahs. I am Director of Safe Spaces at CAIR Michigan. So that's the advocacy department. And as I stated, Amy Doukoure is our staff attorney. So she runs the legal department at CAIR Michigan. You've heard me say this before. If you're watching live, if you're watching later, be sure to share this video with your friends, family members, followers. Make sure that you're following us also on all of our social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and inshallah khair. So I'm going to get us started. Like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about the work that we do, and I guess a part of the work that we do. So MDOC stands for Michigan Department of Corrections. I want to note that that is a governmental agency. So these are state-operated prisons, and they're mainly funded by our tax dollars. So I think that's important to note. But we're going to discuss a little bit of what our advocacy and our legal departments do in protecting the rights and religious rights of those housed there. So to get us started, Sister Amy, if you could talk a little bit about some litigation that we've done regarding hijab. I know our supporters and followers have seen us post a lot about that and talk about, alhamdulillah, our successes, but that, unfortunately, there are issues with women maintaining their hijab physically. So if you could, talk a little bit about cases you've worked on, or maybe even some previous cases as well.
Sure, inshallah. So one of the most important rights to Muslim women is the right to cover and wear their hijab. It's recognized throughout the world as a symbol of Islam, but also a religious duty for Muslims, for those who choose to do it. The Michigan Department of Corrections has failed in implementing a policy that allows women to remain covered. So in 2020, we filed 2 separate litigation cases against the Michigan Department of Corrections with regards to their hijab policy. The first case we filed was in October, and that's on behalf of a Muslim woman who was falsely arrested and eventually exonerated of a crime that she was being accused of, who was taken into the Detroit Detention Center for booking. The Detroit Detention Center, while it's Detroit jail, it is run exclusively by the Michigan Department of Corrections in conjunction with the city of Detroit. So when she was taken in there, they forced her to remove her hijab. They took it off of her. They said she couldn't have it. And they threatened her that if she did not take a picture without her hijab on, that she was going to have to sleep in a holding cell all night long on a floor where there's no bed, where people were coming in and out, where she was going to be exposed to having her hijab off the entirety of her stay. That is unacceptable, and that is not the standard nationally. That should not be the standard that we're putting up with in Michigan. Some people say that when you commit a crime, you lose your rights, and that's just not true. It's recognized that we hold our constitutional rights, even while we're being incarcerated, even when we've been accused of a crime, especially when we've been accused of a crime. The majority of our Bill of Rights protect our freedoms with law enforcement. So that's important for people to know. The majority of the Bill of Rights actually protect individuals who are being accused of a crime by law enforcement. So you don't lose your rights. And in fact, they have a duty to protect your rights. So we filed that lawsuit to make them change their policy for when people are being booked into the Detroit Detention Center. And also because those pictures become public information. They're purchased by website companies that publish them from publicly published mugshot photos for people. This woman had this photo downloaded off of the internet and sent to her family members to humiliate her and embarrass her. So it wasn't bad enough that she was wrongfully arrested, but now there's this public and permanent image of her floating around the internet without her hijab. And that's a huge violation of Muslim women's rights. So in October, we filed a lawsuit about that. That case is still ongoing. We're still in the very, very early phases of that case. And then in December, we filed an additional case from women who are being housed on a more long-term situation after a conviction with the Michigan Department of Corrections. On 99% of the women that are being housed by the Department of Corrections are being housed at a facility called the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility. It's actually in Ypsilanti. It's not too far from our office in Canton. And those women are forced to remove their hijab every 2 years to take a new photo. When they take the photo is then placed on an identification card that they have to carry around with them. And they have to show this identification card to both male and female staff. So repeatedly throughout the day, there's the opportunity for a non-mahram male to view these women without their hijabs. And there have been times when women have been the subject of harassment from guards because of these photos and have been asked about, oh, so this is what you look like without your hijab. This is what your hair looks like by Muslim guards at the Michigan Department of Corrections because of that. And also these photos are also placed on a public website. So you can literally just Google somebody's name that's been incarcerated and you will pull up an image of them. And all of the Muslim women currently housed at the Michigan Department of Corrections have their publicly facing photo without the hijab. And we found this at CAIR Michigan to be a completely unacceptable and egregious violation of religious rights, the right of Muslim women to wear the hijab and to observe their sincerely held religious beliefs. And we are continuing to litigate that matter. As I said, it was filed in December, and that's also very early stages of litigation. But we're very hopeful that these matters will bring forth real change for Muslims who find themselves entrapped in the criminal justice system in Michigan. And another issue that we have at the Michigan Department of Corrections is because of the photographs is women are not allowed to bring their hijab in with them from outside sources. So if they're coming into the Michigan Department of Corrections and they're coming in with a hijab, maybe from court or from a county jail or city jail, they're not allowed to keep it. So how do we then allow them to take their picture? And I know, Sister Zienab, I think that you recently did some very interesting and important work around the issues to access to hijabs in jail. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I will. So, as Sister Amy was stating, there's a women's correctional facility, Women's Huron Valley, and I mean, since I started this position over a year, we've been receiving a lot of complaints from these women, hijab or other, which we'll go into, and not being able to access hijabs, especially as Sister Amy stated, when they're coming in, if they can't bring their own hijab in, some women may not have money in, their little account, and then to find a job could take a few months. And I think average wage, at one of those facilities is 60, 70 cents an hour. So to save up that money and buy all of your necessities like a toothbrush, a toothpaste, etc., it could take months till you can actually afford a hijab, which at these facilities, or specifically at Women's Huron Valley, they can be upwards of like $16, maybe more. So we found that there was a huge issue with women not being able to access hijabs. And eventually, MDOC was, I guess, more responsive and was able to accept donations. So, they requested that of us, and I said, I don't know how, but I'll do it. Okay, let's do it. So alhamdulillah, we were able to get 100 donated hijabs by Hijabs by Sidine. I think that's the name. Oh, Scarves by Sidine. I'm sorry. Scarves by Sidine in Dearborn. But yeah, alhamdulillah, we were able to get those completely donated. So I delivered those myself. So now they have hijabs for the women that are housed there now, and they have some extra, inshallah, for incoming women. But I think this is important to note too, when we're working on these cases, any case that we take on, we're not only thinking about how do we find, swift and immediate relief for our clients, but we're also thinking long-term. So especially when we're dealing with, again, an institution like MDOC, we have to think about how can we prevent these issues moving forward. So inshallah, I'm in the process of having, CAIR-Michigan and I guess myself become an approved vendor, so that way we can sell hijabs to women that are housed at Women's Huron Valley for a much lower cost. So as I mentioned, they're about $16. It could take months. So in our work, we want to make sure that, again, we're not just taking care of the issues in the women that we see now, but long term, how can we change that and make sure that this doesn't happen every single time someone comes into this facility? So, inshallah, we'll be able to provide them for just a couple dollars, that it's at least more affordable. And again, it's just upsetting to think about any woman who would have to sit without her hijab for any period of time. And then especially if you think about being housed at a facility with guards that you don't know. I mean, I don't know, it almost makes me cringe. So alhamdulillah, I'm glad that, we're finding all of these solutions, which is what we want to share with all of you. So Sister Amy, and actually, before I do that, I want to ask you a question. So when you were talking about your litigation regarding hijab, what if somebody were to say, well, these women are being housed and they're staying overnight and they're staying for a long period of time, isn't there some type of, security issue that they need a photo of them without their hijab? Or, what is it that we say when somebody comes to us with that? Because I think, I've heard from you. I think it's an interesting point to touch.
Sure. I mean, it really is. And so the Michigan Department of Corrections, that was their initial response. Because this is, before we filed litigation, we worked on this case for at least 2.5 years, reaching out to the Michigan Department of Corrections, writing to them, asking for meetings, all of these things, and to no avail. And their response when we initially filed the lawsuit against them in October was, well, we need this photo so we can identify them. But really, that argument is kind of a farce, if I'm being honest with you. It's just dishonest. Every type of photo identification that we take nowadays, federal government, state government, allows women to wear their hijab. You can see, if you look at me, look at Sister Zienab, you can see our entire face profile. And in fact, recently, a federal court said that if the woman wears the hijab all of the time, as Muslim women do, it would be more beneficial to have that picture of them with their hijab on for identification purposes, because taking it off could cause them to look significantly different. There's no rational reason why anybody would need to see your hair or your neck. And in fact, it's like the hijab itself is less intrusive than, say, a mustache or a beard, or dyeing your hair, which could be any color. All of those things could obscure or hide your identity a lot more than the hijab if you're wearing it all the time, because no matter what type of hijab you're wearing, your face looks the same. So I know that's a concern for some people, and some people might think, oh, well, they need the picture, when they really don't need the picture. And in fact, Dearborn Heights settled this matter several years back by creating a 2-picture system. One picture that is the forward public-facing picture that goes on identification cards and goes on the internet, and the other picture goes into a file that's never seen again unless there's some legitimate law enforcement emergency interest in seeing that picture. And so there's many ways around it. It's just whether or not the state of Michigan is willing to engage in those conversations and take up that type of approach.
Thank you for that explanation. Because I remember even thinking that to myself too. I said, well, what if they have a reason, or what if there's a necessity? But just like you said, I would be more recognizable to the public with my hijab on, because that's what we wear at all times. So,
sure. And if you look at our passport pictures, immigration pictures for people who are just immigrating to the U.S., driver's license, all of them permit the picture to be taken with your hijab on, so long as they can see your eyebrows. So there's no real reason why Department of Corrections would need any more photo than that. Right.
So we touched a bit on, I guess, photo and hijabs while being at MDOC. So are there other, I guess, could you give us a general preview maybe of some other complaints or cases that CAIR-Michigan has seen regarding hijab?
So yes, there's like a myriad. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding from the Department of Corrections. I don't think that currently they have a single Muslim chaplain within the entire Department of Corrections. Their special activities coordinator is actually very helpful, and he works really hard to try to understand Muslim issues. but it would be helpful if we had some Muslims inside the Department of Corrections. And there's a misunderstanding about what the hijab is, what it looks like, and when people have to wear it. So even outside of the litigation that we're doing, when we receive complaints from women who are in their bedroom unit where male guards are not supposed to be, who are being told that even if they're in their room by themselves, they're being forced to wear their hijab. So even if they're in bed, even if they're sitting in their room and there's no male guards around, they're being forced to wear it, which sometimes, maybe you're hot, maybe you want to relax. It's not a manner that people can force it on you or force it off of you. There's no compulsion in Islam either way. It's a choice. And the standard really is what the person's sincerely held religious beliefs are, not what the state thinks the proper protocol for wearing hijab is. And they've actually used that terminology when they've written to us, that we don't think that that's proper protocol for the hijab. Well, that's great, but that's not their decision. So we've received complaints about that. And we've received complaints about women's property being, if they move to segregation, or maybe during COVID, it was an issue when people were being moved to the segregated COVID unit. The loss of their property. So having a hijab, maybe that they had for years, the only one that they're allowed to have because they're only allowed to have one at a time, was thrown out when they were put in segregation. And then they're missing. So we do have that issue with the loss of religious property from time to time as well.
So that was a lot on hijab. But we know that there are some other issues at the Michigan Department of Corrections. So maybe aside from hijab, what is like other issues or complaints or cases that our office has received still regarding though Islamic attire and those housed at MDOC?
Yeah, so one of the big complaints that we received over a period of the last year and a half, especially, was about Muslim men wearing the kufi, the cap. There's different names for it, but we usually call it the kufi. That's the colloquial term that I know for it. There was, for whatever reason, the Michigan Department of Corrections treated the kufi differently than it did every other single religious or secular head covering. So, for instance, Muslim women are allowed to wear their hijab all of the time. Jewish men are allowed to wear the yarmulke all of the time, 24 hours a day, into any part of the facility. If men are on the yard, they're allowed to wear baseball caps. If they're allowed to wear stocking caps. They're allowed to, in the dorm unit, they're allowed to wear wave caps or do-rags. But the kufi itself was only allowed to be worn on Jummah and only to and from Jummah. And this, again, is another misunderstanding from the Department of Corrections, because their version of Islam that they believed was the proper version was that the kufi was only supposed to be worn during the prayer time. So they only allowed it. And they also made some vague allegation about it being inherently dangerous and a safety issue for the Muslim men to wear the kufi, as if somehow Muslim men were more inherently dangerous than the Jewish men wearing the yarmulke because of the nature of the cap. I'm not really sure. So there was an individual at one of the facilities who filed his own lawsuit and against the Michigan Department of Corrections, and then wrote to us. And we've subsequently joined that lawsuit. Alhamdulillah, they changed the policy. So now all Muslim men are allowed to wear the kufi all the time, the same as every other religious headwear and secular headwear for that matter. They can wear it anywhere they want in the facility and at all times if they believe that that's what they're supposed to do, either because they believe it's a religious obligation or they think it's a religious obligation to identify themselves differently than the non-Muslims, which is what the original filer did. And alhamdulillah, we were able to file it as a class action, and we're waiting for class certification, because despite the fact that the Michigan Department of Corrections changed the policy, we are still actively receiving complaints from various facilities about the proper implementation of that policy. So we know that the men are still having issues. So that litigation is ongoing, but we're at the later stages. We're doing discovery, and we're in the middle of scheduling depositions. We're going to be talking to the Michigan Department of Corrections about why their policy is the way that it is, why it was the way that it was, and why they're not properly following their own policy at this time. So alhamdulillah, it seems like we're going to have a positive outcome on that case, inshallah, just by the basis of the fact that they've changed it. So alhamdulillah, we know that that's one issue, but I know Sister Zienab, you've been working on some other clothing issues and some attire issues involving Muslim men at various facilities. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a case that, well, I guess incoming, I guess messages that we were receiving, specifically from men housed across facilities at MDOC was the issue of rolling up their pants. So, for example, there are some Muslims who believe very strongly that they have to wear their pants rolled up, and this is based on a hadith. And regardless, it's a personally held religious belief, sincerely held. So, you know, the MDOC and that specific facility, and I think 2 facilities, weren't allowing the men to roll up their pants. And we heard reasons, which I guess could be valid. You know, some maybe inmates rolling up their pants could be a sign of like, I guess gang affiliation. So like if one group of men starts to wear attire one way, then that could be a sign that they're all, you know, affiliated with a gang. I don't know. Either way, that wasn't enough for us. So even though it got denied, we still said, that's fine. You can worry about the gangs, but we need to worry about our men who really believe that they need to roll up their pants. So alhamdulillah, I guess the work is still being done on the back end, but we're so close to approval by the director. And I think they're that confident that they're already getting, I guess, the processes on the back end ready to go. So that way, once it is approved, men will be able to go drop off their pants to actually be hemmed. So that way they don't have to roll them, but they are shortened so that they're at or above the knee, and they don't have to worry about them touching the floor. So, you know, again, just another example of an issue that comes to us. And this is, again, all about protecting the religious rights. And that could look very different depending on who the person is. As we know, everybody essentially practices Islam in so many different ways based on their upbringing, culture, etc. So no matter what the issue is, again, as long as it's a sincerely held religious belief, you know, CAIR-MI believes that anyone should be able to freely practice and observe those beliefs. So alhamdulillah, I want to say we're almost successful, but I feel really confident talking about it. So that was a little bit about attire. We are in the month of Ramadan, so I do want to talk a little bit about the cases that we received during this month because, I mean, Ramadan is no secret to the MDOC. They know it's going to come around once a year. But unfortunately, we still get complaints and issues pertaining to a number of things, whether it's fasting, worshiping during Ramadan, etc. So if you could start us off and sort of talk about the history of maybe Ramadan issues that have come to our office.
Sure. So alhamdulillah, you know, Ramadan is a time for worship for everybody, and it's a time that Muslims that are being housed in the DOC really look forward to and take seriously, and really strive to have their needs met and be accommodated appropriately. A few years back, before I was at CAIR, I know that CAIR Michigan was involved with its previous attorney, with Lena Masri, in litigation against the Michigan Department of Corrections because Muslims were not being accommodated appropriately. They were not being provided their suhoor meal or their iftar meal on time. And what they were being provided was insufficient. It was like an insufficient caloric intake. So they weren't eating enough food or enough calories each day to sustain them for fasts, which at that time were about 16 and a half, 17 hours. It was very long days at that time. So CAIR Michigan successfully litigated that matter and entered into a consent judgment with the Michigan Department of Corrections to remedy all of the issues. And they put some systems in place so that now when we receive complaints about people or from people about them not receiving their meals on time or not receiving the right amount of food or the right types of food while they're fasting, we're able to go back and look at it and be able to get that information very quickly. For instance, sometimes we receive complaints like we have this year that the food is being served late, especially for iftar. So maybe we were making iftar at 8:23 or 8:26 right at the beginning of Ramadan, but women were not being fed until almost 10:30 at night. That's a problem because, as you know, we're not supposed to prolong our fast, and prolonging it by 2 hours is a very significant amount of time. But they have logs now, and that we were able to get a Freedom of Information Act request and get access to those logs very quickly to find out whether or not or what time these women were being accommodated, so that we can go directly to the Michigan Department of Corrections and say, hey, this is a real problem. These women are not being fed on time. And the consent of judgment will allow us to go directly back to court and seek sanctions and an award of fees and punitive damages against the Michigan Department of Corrections if it's not remedied immediately. So that's something that I know that we've been working on. And I know sometimes we talk about the litigation aspect of what we're doing, but really the advocacy aspect is sometimes more fruitful. And that's what Sister Zienab has been doing. And so I just want to give out a shout out to Sister Zienab and all of the work that she's doing, because sometimes women will write to me because they know me, because we're engaged in litigation, or maybe they're a client or a former client of ours. And I will sometimes go directly to Sister Zienab and say, hey, we've received this complaint from this person, but you have such a good rapport with these several individuals at this facility and at the Lansing office. Can you please reach out and see if you can remedy that? And alhamdulillah, Sister Zienab has been so far this Ramadan specifically very successful in remedying a lot of the issues that have come in from several of the facilities that we've had, including late meals, people being placed in segregation for being late to their own meal, even though they were on the housing unit. I spoke to the client we had today that was put in segregation because she was late to pick up her iftar meal, even though she was coming from health. And Sister Zienab called the facility right away, and she was released the same day. And the woman told me, like, I know I was released because CAIR Michigan reached out to the facility and they released me, and they told me that's why they released me. So Sister Zainab's work has been very instrumental in quickly solving the problems. Litigation solves problems over a slow period of time usually, and our advocacy work sometimes has the ability to solve it much quicker. So alhamdulillah for that. So I know Sister Zainab's done a lot of work this year during Ramadan. So I think that Sister Zienab should tell us a little bit about all of the important things that she's been doing with the Michigan Department of Corrections to make sure that Ramadan goes smoothly for all of our brothers and sisters housed there.
Yikes, you're making me blush. Well, I will say, I mean, as soon as I started this position, you've really been a huge help in terms of helping me guide my work and actually getting me to a place where I'm comfortable leading this department. So really thank you for all of your support and guidance. And I think we work well together on these cases. And it's really not all me. And you were so patient in these long litigations. And Sister Amy really does do a lot of work, especially as the only attorney that CAIR Michigan has. And again, we're only talking about MDOC cases, but we have a number of, whether it's different sectors, whether it's different type of state sanctioned racism or discrimination that we see all over, employment, etc. So alhamdulillah, I'm glad to have a great colleague and a great team to make this all happen. But to talk a little bit about this Ramadan and the work Safe Spaces is doing, inshallah, I'm going to be delivering more dates tomorrow, but our date initiative, so date as in tamid or fruit date, last year I started, and we wanted to bring Muslims housed at MDOC something to really, really feel like they can celebrate Eid, celebrate the end of Ramadan, and kind of have like a taste of home. And I think dates having a religious significance, and especially pertaining to our fast, we thought it would be a great idea to deliver those dates to Muslims housed across the facilities across Michigan. So last year was our first try, and we got approval or permission from 4 facilities. About 400 Muslims housed across MDOC received dates. This year, we've more than doubled that. So over 850 Muslims housed that will be receiving dates. And we got more dates this time. So last year was about like 30 pounds of dates. This year, it's, I think, 5 times that amount, like 130 pounds of dates. So alhamdulillah, we're delivering those dates to facilities. And again, it's something small, but I think it really does, it makes an impact. And I think it helps Muslims housed at MDOC facilities feel connected to home, feel like they can continue their worship, feel like they have something that's maybe different than every other day, even if it is a couple of dates. So like I said, tomorrow I'm going to be delivering to some more facilities, but alhamdulillah, yeah, it's been a successful project, and I'm excited to see how it can grow, because I think we have about 30 MDOC facilities in Michigan, but it's all based on, you know, approval by individual prisons or, you know, facilities. So unfortunately, we got a lot less of a positive feedback this year because of COVID, which is understood, but some facilities weren't taking any, you know, external donations because of COVID, so it makes sense. But alhamdulillah, I am happy for the 6 or 7 who did accept this year, but we're reaching a lot more Muslims. Of course, there's a different amount of Muslims in each facility, but alhamdulillah, very happy to be continuing the initiative. So I think we're gonna wrap up. Do you have any other points you want to touch on or anything else? I don't think we have questions or comments from listeners, but this was fun. I really enjoyed talking about, I mean, it's upsetting that we have to do this work. I always say that, but it's exciting because I see that we are making so much of an impact, and we're actually changing. Again, we're not just putting a Band-Aid on issues or, you know, providing immediate relief, but we're making an effect long-term that not only affects even Muslims, but, you know, religious rights of all people. So I always enjoy talking about the work that we do, especially pertaining to MDOC. I hope you enjoyed this discussion as well, Sister Amy.
I did. I actually, some of the work that I enjoy best is the work that we do for our brothers and sisters who are being housed with the Michigan Department of Corrections. They're one of the most vulnerable populations of Muslims. They're really at the mercy of the state, and they're really at the mercy of having their rights taken away. So some of the work that we're doing for them is most fulfilling. Personally, for me, I really, really enjoy the work itself. I did want to mention one thing that we didn't talk about, which is the work that Brother Dawood did last year during Ramadan, and inshallah is going to be providing this year during Ramadan. Last year during Ramadan, as we know, because of COVID, there was no congregational worship anywhere. And that was also included in the Michigan Department of Corrections. The Muslim men and women that were housed there were not allowed to gather and pray during Ramadan. So Brother Dawood actually provided a series of lectures that was supposed to be just for Ramadan, that was played every Friday. There were Juma reminders that were played every Friday in the Michigan Department of Corrections for the Muslim men and women, so that they could have those reminders during the holiest month of Ramadan. That initiative actually went on until October, I think, of last year, maybe November, until they opened up the congregational prayer again. And it's my understanding that Brother Dawood, again, somebody has reached out to him again to see if he could provide those tapes, and we're actively working on getting those videos, and Brother Dawood's working on providing those videos again, inshallah, to the Muslim brothers and sisters that are being housed over there. So I didn't want to end the talk without talking about the important work that our brother is also doing at the Michigan Department of Corrections.
That's a great point to highlight. And speaking of our brother, I hope he joins us. There he is.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, to the viewing audience, assalamu alaikum. And obviously I was backstage the entire time, admiring the work of my 2 colleagues. And if I can just add on one comment regarding the beneficial work that Sister Zienab and Sister Amy have been doing. And I really want to highlight something that Sister Amy said, is that just because people are incarcerated doesn't mean that they lack rights. And there are some people who have this mentality of, oh, well, they're locked up, or they're so-called jailbirds, so they, you know, why are they complaining? Well, no, people who get incarcerated do not check their human rights at the door. That's number one. And number two, I like to also remind the viewing audience a general reminder that not everyone who is locked up is actually guilty, right? Just because someone's locked up doesn't mean that they're guilty. We actually were involved in helping one sister in a very high profile case. Alhamdulillah, she was able to get out, Sister Sawatu, Islam Ara, and you all can look that up, that case, very high profile, but she was unjustly incarcerated in the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and actually had to give birth while she was incarcerated. She was later on released, and she got relief from that case. But, you know, sometimes there's prosecutorial misconduct. People get retrials, people get out on appeals. Other times people plea out because they are unable to afford a criminal defense attorney, right? So they end up taking a plea and for a lesser amount of time out of fear that they may get several decades for a case. So maybe they just decide to take a plea and maybe get 18 months. So doesn't mean that they're actually guilty. So I just want to lift that up and mention that. And in regards to the other work in safe spaces, and also what was mentioned is that many people come to CAIR Michigan because besides God, who everyone should run to first, symbolically run to, that many people feel that they have no other human beings to run to or come to except for CAIR. And CAIR Michigan is there. CAIR Michigan is there, and we've helped many people who actually would be, we could say, are Zakatul Mal eligible, that we help because they are in financial crises. They didn't even have enough money for their legal expenses to begin with, and then they're incarcerated with no money. And these are people who are what we would consider masakin and fuqara, amongst the poor and the destitute, who contact CAIR Michigan. So when someone has their cell searched and their Quran gets ripped up, they contact CAIR Michigan if they're in Michigan. Sisters who are denied their hijab, they contact CAIR Michigan. People want Ramadan accommodations, they contact CAIR Michigan. Brothers want to wear a kufi or a topi, and they see Jewish people wearing yarmulkes, but they can't wear their topi or their kufi, they contact CAIR Michigan. So CAIR is there. And with that, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, we know this is the 28th evening of Shahr Ramadan, the month in which Allah Azza wa Jal said, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Qur'an hudan lin-nasi wa bayyinatin min al-huda wal-furqan. This blessed month, this month of fasting, in which the Quran was revealed. And of those things that the Quran encourages us to do and commands us to do is to be charitable. Is for us to pay our zakat and to also to help those who are in need. So in this 28th evening, and tonight is the 29th month, and we look for Laylatul Qadr on the odd nights. I encourage you all who are watching this now, or perhaps if you want to wait and maybe get the ajr tonight after Maghrib prayer time, I encourage you that you can pay some of your zakatul mal to CAIR Michigan, and we have it set aside specifically. I have a database just for those people who give it, and we look at those who are needy and poor who are eligible. We're not extravagant, or we don't misspend the money on things that shouldn't be spent on. Or you can give sadaqah to help us in our general expenses. Because litigation is not cheap, right? We have an office to maintain and staff, and we're a professional office. And for professional work, we as a Muslim community should expect professionalism. We have to pay for it, and everything can't be free sabilillah. You know, everyone says fi sabilillah. Well, sometimes we want free sabilillah, right? We want, as I've said in fundraisers before, we have prime rib taste, but only willing to spend samosa money. And that's not the way it should be, my brothers and sisters in Islam. If we are a people of ihsan, right? Muslims are supposed to be the people of ihsan, of excellence, and if we want excellent services, then we need to spend bil ihsan. And I will end with this part of the Holy Quran that was revealed in this blessed month of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَنْ يَبْخَلْ فَإِنَّمَا يَبْخَلُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَاللَّهُ غَنِيٌّ وَأَنْتُمُ الْفُقَرَاءُ. He subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whoever is stingy, they're only being stingy to themselves. And Allah is the rich, He's free of need, and we are the poor. We are the ones who are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So whatever you give in your charitable giving, at the end of the day, it is helping you. Or when we give, we're helping ourselves, our own souls. And when we don't spend in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah has no need of it. What we're actually denying ourselves, Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, we are denying ourselves. So let's spend on ourselves. CAIR-Michigan.org/donate. Hit the button if you're watching. Go after Maghrib, or you can mail a check and money order and do it bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Drop it in the mailbox before Maghrib time on Wednesday. And you get the ajr for Shahr Ramadan bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And with that, I will close. Kullu amwan bi khair. I wish you all well. And I also want to end with this. I'm sorry for filibustering. I want you all to make a dua for Ali Yahya. Brother Ali Yahya was the father of our long-term staffer, Fuada Yahya. She worked with us for about 4 or 5 years, and she just left us a few months ago. Well, her father succumbed to COVID-19 yesterday. And we all went to his janazah today at Masjid Dixon, South Dearborn. And I watched him be lowered into the ground in the dirt, covering him. So we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our brother Ali Yahya, uncle Ammu Ali Yahya, and to forgive him of his sins, and mercy upon his soul, accept him amongst the shuhada, accept him amongst the martyrs. بغير حساب, without any reckoning. We ask that, and we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower His patience and His perseverance upon the Yahya family, upon Sister Fuada and Sister Hanan, Sister America, Sister Fauzia, Brother Fauzi, all of them. We ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower them with His patience and grant them comfort during this difficult time, and also to increase them in rizqan tayyiba, rizqan wasi'a tayyiba, to increase them in their sustenance and their wealth in the absence of their beloved father leaving us. And we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us and give us all good health. And I hope that if any of you have any loved ones that are sick, I sincerely ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give them shifa, shifa min kulli da, to give them healing of all of their ailments. And we ask this by the right and through the sanctity of Surah Al-Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.